Good morning and welcome to All Falcons Live. For some of you, it is earlier than others. My name is Scott Kennedy. I'm in Atlanta, and this is my friend and co-host, Nick Kendall. He's in Seattle, so he wakes up bright and early to make sure that we can talk Falcons for breakfast on a Wednesday morning here on All Falcons. And Nick, how are you this morning?
I'm doing pretty well. This is early, but not as early as I am up typically in the summer and fall when I wake up to do whatever hike I'm doing. Sometimes I'm up at 3 a.m. The one I did this past Monday, I was up at 1 a.m. because I had to make the 2-hour drive and it was a 12-hour hike. But I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, no, my feet are sore. But hopefully not as sore as the Falcons defense has been these last few weeks, especially. I mean, Taylor Heineke, not great, but Falcons offense at least showing a little bit of life and on my fantasy team as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing about the Falcons right now is there's been improvements here, and then something regresses, and then there's improvements there, and then something regresses. I think the problem with this week was, this past week against the Washington football team, and I'm going to apologize in advance because there's no way I'm going to get through 30 minutes without calling them the Redskins. There was a familiar pattern of not being able to run the ball when it mattered, not being able to stop the ball when it mattered, and blowing a lead when you in a game that you probably should have won. And that I don't care who the coach is. That doesn't change until the personnel upgrades. To a certain extent, when you've heard me rant about this for 6 months that we've known each other, that saying the Falcons were in a win now position was asinine. Or especially saying that Kyle Pitts that was a win now draft pick. This is a team that couldn't run the ball, couldn't protect the passer, and couldn't stop anybody on defense, and didn't have any salary cap room. What part of that says win now? No, this was a rebuild for the Falcons, and dropping the game to Washington. But as you said, there were definitely some good things. Arthur Smith was in no mood to talk about bright spots after another loss, and that's good. I like the way he handles his press conference. He's handled that aspect of being a rookie head coach very, very well. He's gotten a lot of goodwill from the media and the fans because of the way he handles himself. And he's like, "Listen, I'm not here to talk bright spots. We just lost a game," and good on him. As a Falcons fan, I want to look for some bright spots, and there were some out there, weren't there?
Oh, yeah. Number one, got to say, a guy that I don't know if we did this even before the season started or if it was week one, but a guy that I've always had a spot for, and I thought that a good offensive mind could utilize him is Cordell Patterson, because I really love those flex wide receiver running back types. I think getting burned year after year by the Patriots, flexing out that running back, and also growing up playing high school football against David Johnson. Those running backs who can go out and do stuff in the slot and anything like that and be an extension of the run game through the short pass game in the red zone when it's especially hard. I love that. And Cordell Patterson, great pickup, great usage. He's been, Mike Davis he's not disappeared, of course, but with how good Cordell Patterson has been, I'm ecstatic about his usage, his play, his talent. And it's great. He's been a great weapon for them. I'm really excited to see him continue his usage throughout the year.
And it flashed early, going to training camp. He flashed early, and you have to think somebody that can be first team All Pro and return 8 kickoffs for touchdowns over the course of his career knows how to navigate traffic. He's 230 pounds. I've said he's been doing his best Derrick Henry impersonation for the entire time that he's had a Falcons helmet on. And you hesitate to take what you see in camp because so many of those things you're going against the Falcons defense, or we're trying to highlight this. Yeah. They're not going to ground. The linebackers aren't hitting. You're not sure. But he's taken that to another level. And just watching a little bit to get ready for the Jets game, just watching Derrick Henry again with the Titans, there's some similarities there. Derrick Henry obviously is – a pure running back, and he has all the little, what's the word? The small things that make you good.
Intricacies.
There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. That make him special. His body lean, his shoulder roll. Just little things that he will have that Cordell Patterson may never have. But the running style is quite similar, and we may see him carry the ball a little bit more out of the backfield. Now, my question for you is, where was Cordell Patterson in the fourth quarter? Why wasn't he used more, trying to close out that game? I understand ball protection with Mike Davis, but you've got Matt Ryan, who's playing his best game of the year, 4 touchdown passes, first Pro Football Focus guy for the Falcons on offense in the 90s on grade. And you turn around and you get ultra conservative. Not a big fan of that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we just go around praising Mike Davis or Arthur Smith, and then we turn right back around and what's going on there. But I guess it's because maybe they don't trust him to be. He's more boom or bust with the run game, where you're probably Mike Davis is more likely to get 2-4 yards each run. And Cordell Patterson not always the most consistent, at least from what I've seen from the running back. And this isn't so much Atlanta. This is just historically the vision and the patience as a runner hasn't always been there. So I'm guessing that's it. But still, you want to get your best guy the ball, and especially with how he was playing, if he could flip the field, that could be ball game right there. So I don't know. I don't know what happened there.
I want to say good morning to the chat. Ashton, welcome in. Appreciate you being here. The more that I interact with Ashton on in these different chats, the more we see eye to eye on a lot of stuff. So appreciate you being here, and glad to have you. Hit us up with any questions you might have, personnel wise. This is a team that you saw, the New York Jets. You just saw recently. You saw the Denver Broncos beat them. So we'll hit on them as we get towards the end of the show. And we're going to go about 30 minutes here, and then I'll stay longer if we've got comments and stuff coming in. But I know Nick has to go at the bottom of the hour at 10:30 Eastern time. My problem with Patterson wasn't Mike Davis. I understand that Mike Davis is a good running back. He's getting the tough yards. You trust him to hold the ball. He's a good receiver. I think he caught 60 passes last year for the Carolina Panthers. He's a really good receiver. I didn't have any problem with that. But Cordero Patterson had already flexed out to wide receiver for half the game. Slot, out wide. Against the New York Giants, you set up the game-winning drive on a screen pass out wide to Cordero Patterson. So I don't mind Mike Davis at running back. I don't mind. But Cordero Patterson should be getting the ball somewhere on the field. It's not like the Atlanta Falcons have a huge dearth of targets at the receiver position. There's really 2+, and Calvin Ridley wasn't having his best game. Kyle Pitts is still a rookie being doubled. Hayden Hurst, another tight end. So you got 2 tight ends and a wide receiver, and then that's it. The Falcons have some guys that are playing the other wide receiver positions. Cordero Patterson was the best player on the field. Get him the football. Find a way to get him a football. I don't care if it's a jet sweep. Find a screen pass. If it was good enough against the Giants to win, to set up a game-winning drive, it's good enough against Washington to help close that out.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I do want to now lean in here and play a little host, because I want to ask you some questions about just looking at the stats in this game in general. So you said Matt Ryan did have the best game of his career, and that's true.
No, not career, just of the season.
Year. Excuse me. Yes, the season. Excuse me. Pardon me. With obviously 4 touchdowns, a solid game. He was efficient in the red zone. But 25 for 42, and that is not the most efficient passing game you've ever seen. Obviously, some of that can be on the offensive line, but looking at these target distribution, 7 receptions on 13 targets for Ridley, 4 receptions on 9 targets for Pitts. What's going up with the efficiency aspect in the pass game? Because that just does not scream.
Part of it was a concerted effort to move the ball downfield. To get the ball downfield. So they were stretching it. So even if it wasn't going all that well, I appreciate y'all coming and hitting that like button as you're coming on Facebook. That's a big help for us. Please keep doing that. And if you're watching this after the fact, I know we actually get most of our viewers on demand. This is kind of a strange time zone. So while we do this live, we get a lot of our viewers on demand. So appreciate you hitting the comments and the like buttons after the fact too. A lot of that was a concerted effort to get the ball downfield, to stretch the defense a little bit, something that that Matt Ryan hasn't done to this point. So there are less high percentage throws to Calvin Ridley, especially. Now, a couple of those plays, I'm not going to call them drops because Calvin Ridley didn't drop a ball, but there were several times that he could have made a catch that he didn't. And that was called out during that. There's 2 where he's going up between 2 guys. A receiver, the caliber of Calvin Ridley, or at least the caliber that Calvin Ridley wants to be and they wants to be paid as, has to come down with some of those passes, or probably 3 of them that would have been big plays, game-changing type of plays that he didn't catch. So that was one of them. I think Calvin really didn't have his best game.
Yeah, he's a really good receiver. I still feel like they need maybe somebody who's a little bit more of a bully on the outside as an X, especially. I mean, you can use Kyle Pitts that way for sure. But I think Kyle Pitts's money is if you can line him up against linebacker as like a big slot or in line. So you probably do need to work on the boundary at the wide receiver position. And I know you often talk, maybe it's the old school versus new school thoughts over here, but the Falcons, I thought their trenches in this game were okay. And now Washington football team's offensive line is nothing to write home about besides Brandon Scherff, who is amazing. Shout out Brandon Scherff. I used to see him at my local grocery store in Iowa City. Just, you would not imagine how much meat he'd have in his cart. Incredible. But other than that, not the best offensive line. So I thought the Falcons held their own in the trenches, but the perimeter really struggled. And that's on the offensive side of the ball. I don't think they have the depth of wide receivers you've talked about, and defense. Losing Isaiah Oliver is a big blow. AJ Terrell has looked great, but yeah, again,
he was coming off a concussion. He missed the Giants game.
Yep.
For sure. And they lack playmakers at the skill positions, which is ironic because that's where Thomas Dimitroff put all his money and put all of his draft picks going in. And Russell Gage he's been out the last couple of weeks at wide receiver, and he was held out. He was deemed important enough to be held out of the entire preseason. But I think he's maybe a 3 at best for the most part. And right now, Calvin Ridley is showing that he is a great number 2, not necessarily the number 1. And for me, one of my biases, I like big receivers. I like big receivers. You can throw them open. They can bully guys. And, it takes 2 guys to cover somebody when they can get 10 feet in the air to catch a ball. You need 2 guys on them for the most part, which frees up a guy like Calvin Ridley. Now, Calvin Ridley got numbers last year. He did. But I'd like to see him do a little more moving forward because his option has been picked up for next year. I think at about $11 million. Then he's a free agent. He's not a young free agent. You think of Calvin Ridley as being basically new. He turned 20 his senior year in high school. In December of his senior year of high school, he turned 20. So he turned 21 as a freshman, 22 as a sophomore, 23. So he entered the league as a 24-year-old rookie. This is almost like a BYU kid coming back from his Mormon mission. So, when he'll turn 28 next year and then enter a free agent year at 29, he's only going to get one more contract for the most part. So if he wants to get that giant free agent contract, he's got to step it up.
Yeah, you're totally right. And not to break too much news on the podcast, but a couple big-time football stars on the defensive side of the football who are, maybe their sun is starting to set, have been released recently. You saw Jalen Smith yesterday, correct, for the Cowboys. Did you see the one that just happened about 20 minutes ago?
Yeah, Stephon Gilmore.
Stephon Gilmore released. Sorry, I just that just came across my waiver wire, I guess. I think everybody's a Kansas City Chief until proven otherwise, so we'll see. But
and here's my thoughts on that. And I want to shout out to Ash real quick. Says watching the Falcons is always so weird for a Broncos fan because they score so much but still lose. As a Broncos fan, we never score and sometimes win. And again, to me, Ash, and that's part of the way the team was put together. I've tried to dumb it down and try and make it as simple, Twitterable as possible. That the general manager, Thomas Dimitroff, built the team as if he was the agent for a quarterback on a 7v7 team. Paid the quarterback a ton of money and then went out and got overpaid for receivers and basically neglected everything else. So they were there to score, but they couldn't run the ball. This goes back years. This goes back to me railing on Thomas Dimitroff about giving up 5 high draft picks for a wide receiver as your first move after giving up 50 points to the Packers in a playoff game. The next 2 years later, you're in the NFC Championship against the San Francisco 49ers. Julio goes for 200 yards and a couple of touchdowns, and you lose because you can't kill the game or stop them when you need to. This has been a recurring pattern for a decade. And to be fair, it's actually a better place to be than they were the previous 2 decades. So it was actually good Falcons football. So, but talking about, Stephon Gilmore, The Falcons' salary cap situation makes that cost prohibitive. They've got about 800,000. I think they're second to last in available cap space for this year. Gilmore was making 7 and couldn't come to terms with the New England Patriots. And you mentioned the Kansas City Chiefs. I actually like the idea of the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are sitting on about $21 million of available cap space right now. He's from Rock Hill, South Carolina, which is pretty close to Carolina, and Carolina's playing well. So, having a team that is on the ascendancy close to home with a bunch of money, that's a pretty good formula when you're looking for free agent signings.
I'll put on a different hat real quick. Where do unretired Patriots end up? They go into Florida to play with Tom Brady. And I think they just lost Carlton Davis for a bit as well. Or maybe it was Jamel Dean, one of those Auburn lengthy corners. And that team's secondary has been struggling. And that's obviously a team that is in their window. And Gilmore has some understanding of Tom Brady. So I'm guessing that is a high probability one as well.
Yeah, that makes sense too. Going to NFC South, unfortunately, it was like that. They just went with Richard Sherman on that too, and he was a possibility as well. Wanted to say hello. Jay's in here. Where did you go, Jay? Jay's jumped in the chat. Appreciate you being here. And then Chaz Andrews coming in on Facebook. Appreciate you being here too. Says Atlanta needs to sign Collins and Gilmore. And Gilmore going to be hard on the cap, but Gilmore would help we just lost a corner for the season. Speaking of Isaiah Oliver, which I'm going to touch back on that after I finish this. Collins is a vet that can help the young defense, but based on the cap reasons, it probably won't happen. And I'm still a fan in the end. If you weren't a fan for the Falcons during the hard times, you wouldn't be a fan. I mean, that's when you've got to get out your Falcons shirt and Falcons hat is after when it's tough. Just to remind people, I've always said, growing up in Atlanta, as long as you're showing me the effort to get better, and this goes back to the conversation we had last night on building the Broncos about allocating the resources towards the offensive line. It hasn't worked out 100%, but you're putting forth the effort. I have no doubt that Arthur Blank is going to put forth the effort and allocate the resources to make this team better. That wasn't the case if you grew up in the 80s and 90s with the Smith family. They didn't care. They were just collecting a check and letting people go, and we're happy to let it go. So as long as you're allocating the resources, you still got me. As long as you still care, I'll still care. Speaking of Isaiah Oliver, though, Nick, this one hurts. This one hurts.
Yeah, it's a big bummer. Obviously, a player. Is this the last year of his rookie contract? It's got to be close if it's not.
It's got to be close. He's fourth year. He might have one year extension on there. But this is a guy. Who's that guy that's a punching bag for everybody else? For the fans. Matt Ryan's probably that guy on offense. But on defense, it's been Isaiah Oliver to a certain extent because the corner, you're out on an island and you're exposed, and if your name's getting called, it's probably for bad reasons. He struggled last year. Man, he made himself a home at nickelback, was playing the best football of his career, one of the best players on the Falcons defense, and then he's lost for the season. It's a crusher.
It really is a crusher, and you know how I feel about secondary. Offense dictates where the ball goes, so you can't just have one good corner. You need 3 or 4 because you have to be able to blanket multiple options and make it tough. So it's more about a quality and the quantity sort of thing rather than just having one great cornerback, which Terrell is trending towards being a really good cornerback in this league. But losing Oliver sucks. And this secondary for the Falcons, not super impressive. From what I can gather, Richie Grant has not been impressive in the games. I understand he's a rookie, but still, that's not what you want when he has played. And cornerbacks have not been super impressive other than Terrell, who's obviously injured as well. So Fabian Moreau, not looking good. The other cornerbacks sticking out here. TJ Green, I know that he was a big athlete at Clemson, but he hasn't looked good. Avery Williams.
Couldn't convert it, going through him. TJ Green seems to be the guy that is on the wrong end of every big play right now.
Yep.
He's being targeted. He's a converted safety. And, the play against, the throw, Taylor Heineke shrugs off Dante Fowler. I'm not sure who came in off the left end. In his face, throws it up for grabs. I'm like, well, hell, that should be an interception. Not only was it not an interception, the two Falcons in coverage never found the ball, and McLaurin just, fields a fair catch in the end zone. Those are killers, and TJ Green was picked on early last week. But to be fair, I had said Isaiah Oliver would be the logical move. You take him from nickel and you move him as a starter. when Terrell went out, but he's playing so well that they didn't want to weaken 2 spots. And I understand that. It worked out. Isaiah Alvaro was great, even though, TJ Green was targeted. But then you got a couple of rookies backing him up because Kendall Sheffield, who was a backup too, he was put on the IR last week. So it wasn't good to begin with. And now it's been decimated. It's tough. Going up against a gunslinger like Zach Wilson, it's going to be interesting this week.
Yeah, no, that will be really interesting. I do feel pretty good about the Falcons matchup versus the Jets because they're kind of the opposite. Somebody earlier, I think Ashton was talking about how they're the opposite. The Jets have a really good defense, but I don't respect their offense very much. So this is a game where the Falcons actually should be able to put up, even though the Jets have a better solid defense, should be able to put up some points and get a lead. And then the Falcons defense have an easier matchup than they've had almost all season. So it should be a good game. Obviously, this is something that maybe it's too early in the season to start thinking about, but this is a game that could have some major draft order implications.
It's not too early. It's not too early in the season. I've already said, I've been saying for a while, looking at this one, looking at the Jaguars game, that these are games that could determine who's going to end up with the number 1 overall. The Jets are coming off their first win, a nice win against Tennessee. The Falcons blew a lead and they're sitting at 1-3. The team that's 1-4 coming out of this one, they got a leg up on that number number 1 overall pick. Remember we had a discussion about upside. Upside. What does upside mean? Upside typically means bigger, faster, stronger. You've got the physical ability to make plays that someone else can't. That doesn't necessarily mean you're a better player because you don't do all the little things, the smaller things better. Speaking of baseball, if I got a guy that can hit 450 feet, he's got upside, but he's not making enough contact. The thought is if I can get him to make contact, I've also got a guy that can hit 450 feet. So I want to show you this play as a perfect definition of upside and what scares the hell out of me about Zach Wilson. So third quarter play here, and just his ability to improvise and the arm talent.
Number 2 overall pick for a reason.
That ball flew almost 60 yards in the air.
Yeah.
Running dead right. Now, it's easier to – I actually found it easier to roll against my body because then I could twist and torque when I was throwing. But, it is easier to throw quickly the direction you're facing because you can go. But to throw downfield, you can't twist and torque. That's all arm. Yeah. And you see the defensive backs. It's like, do you really blame the defensive backs for letting the receivers get behind them? A 60-yard throw, rolling dead right on a sprint. He can't make that throw. Well, he can. And if the Falcons lose containment, which they are wont to do at times, that kid's got the arm to really, really hurt you. That wasn't the only one. He had a couple in there that I marked on this game as plays that make you a little bit nervous as a Falcons defensive coordinator going, oh, God, we've got to keep this contained. Because a broken play in this situation can absolutely kill you. It can kill you. Taylor Heineke was doing it, by throwing up air balls. This kid's going to hurt you.
Yeah, I do think you have a few chances for some 50-50 balls from Zach Wilson as well. He hasn't been the best at protecting the football so far, and I think his pure drop back game is still in the fledgling stages. So I agree with you. Do the Falcons have enough quality pass rush though, where they can change up what they're doing schematically and play more contain versus then maybe you're sacrificing your pass rush completely at that point, and then making him comfortable back there. So it's a double-edged sword. I don't know if you have the quality to really play that pure contain, but he can kill you on those broken plays like that.
And ironically, this is the second game in a row that I've watched. I watched him early in the season before he took on the Broncos, where he threw 3 interceptions and they were bad interceptions. He struggles when he has time. Yeah. It's when he's got time to think about it is when his decision-making process kind of goes kablooey. When he's just a pure freelancing gunslinger, he's freaking dangerous. Yeah. So, the thought of, okay, let's blitz him, let's put him under pressure. as soon as you blitz him, you're probably going to be in man coverage in the backside of things. And if he breaks containment on a blitz, you're going to give him, plus he can run a little bit. He's a good athlete.
Yeah.
He's going to break containment, and that's when he becomes really dangerous. So, I like what you said. Can you contain him in there? Instead of flying by, the Falcons don't have the speed off the edge rushers that are necessarily going to be going around the corners. They're more trying to shove a guy into the backfield, which should bode well for them. Keep him in the pocket. Let him think about it. I don't necessarily want to blitz the lights out on a kid like this. And that's 2 games in a row I've felt that way.
Yeah, let him think.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Jay coming in here saying Zach Wilson is Drew Lock that's more twitched up. I agree with you there. He does have some of those abilities. However, I will say Zach Wilson's ability to hit spots on the field is night and day versus Drew Lock. I think I can come in here and not have to dance around Drew Lock as much as I do have on the Broncos channels, because otherwise people will come for me. But like that last drive with Drew Lock, his ball placement was terrible. There's just, the throws that were calling for back shoulder, he's throwing it on the opposite shoulder. There's a throw to the running back. The running back has to jump up to get it, and he loses yards instead of gaining maybe 10. So Zach Wilson, I think, is much more precise with where he puts the football. He's not a general accuracy thrower. He can hit buckets.
Yeah. So, before we get out of here, we're coming down on the bottom of the hour here, coming up on 30 minutes, and we'll let everybody get to their day. And again, as you're watching this after the fact, do us a favor, hit those like, follow, share, and subscribe buttons. We got several hundred views on Facebook and YouTube, and make sure more people are seeing this. As more people start to look at this, we'll start doing more things. And because we certainly have a lot of fun doing it. Real quick before we go, the Bleacher Report did an article on the rookie head coaches. And it gave, where would you think that Arthur Smith would rank? Not rank, but if you're grading Arthur Smith right now, where would you grade him?
God, incomplete. That's so hard to say.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to cop out.
I'd probably give him a C+.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's been fine. I don't know how much of the defensive struggles are on him, and I know with how he wants to run, having an offensive line, especially, who's Jalen Mayfield, who again had a terrible game, can really just black hole an entire unit. But I think I'd give him a C+, and I think the overall CEO managerial stuff, like you talked about his press conferences, that seems to have been good. It's pretty hard though to judge him schematically, given he's new to this team and how much the identity is shifting from his offense to his predecessor. Yeah,
well, I certainly agree, and I'll get into it why, but I'm going to let you go. So I know you've got to get out of here. There's a couple of questions I wanted to hit. I want to give my thoughts on this and a couple more, and I will let you get out of here, and then we will continue. So we will see you tomorrow on Mile High Huddle YouTube channel on Broncos for Breakfast.
Yes, sir. Everyone have a good one. Go St. Louis Cardinals tonight, right? Playing the money bag Dodgers. So that should be a good one. The Cardinals always seem to have the Dodgers number, but we'll see. Those Dodgers are pretty damn impressive.
I was a little surprised to see that the Dodgers were such heavy favorites in that game, considering the streak that the Cardinals have been on. You would not have remembered this, but it was so much more fun. The last true pennant race was 93. And it came down to the Giants and the Braves. The Braves won 104 games and the Giants won 103, and they missed the playoffs because there were no
wild card,
participation awards. If you didn't win your division, you were out. And that race down the stretch in August and September between Barry Bonds in his first season with the Giants and Atlanta Braves was fantastic. I had no idea that the Giants and the Dodgers were at 106 games. It didn't matter. They're going to make the playoffs. Who cares?
Yeah.
So there's my get off my lawn moment. So get out of here, and I will talk to you later. Appreciate you being here, and I want to hit a couple of these questions, and then we'll move on for the day. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, have a good one, guys.
So a couple questions I wanted to hit on here, and I wanted to finish up on the conversation that we were having about the grade. I think I would actually grade Arthur Smith a little bit higher based on all of the factors that he was coming into, and Terry Fontenot for that matter, because to me, the coach and the general manager fairly well tied at the hip to a certain extent. if they did any deficiency, it was that they came in saying we're here to win now, no rebuild. And that, to me, that was all talk. That was all PR. You don't want to lose your team out of the gates by saying we're here for a rebuild. You'll lose your veterans. You'll lose them. They'll basically pack it in and call their agents and say, you got to get me out of here. And it's a sunk type of it's a sunk season. You don't want to do that. But every move they've made has shown that it is a rebuild. So the article from Bleacher Report says they gave him a C based on the expectations were higher. The expectations were higher. Well, no, they weren't. No, absolutely not. This team couldn't run the ball, couldn't protect the passer, had no salary cap room, and couldn't stop anybody. Kyle Pitts is going to fix all that. That was a win now move. And the Arthur Smith, the offensive genius, is going to give you an elite type of offense right away, especially when you know that Julio Jones went out. No, come on. That's ridiculous. It's lazy. Do better. Julio Jones wanted out because his team wasn't going to win. They let him out because they needed some salary cap space. And as a thank you to Julio Jones for 10 years of being one of the greatest Atlanta Falcons of all time. Kyle Pitts was drafted because he was a freak of a player to build for the long term. He's not going to help them win many games this year. This was not a win now move. That was silly. So I would give Arthur Smith a solid B, and I might even upgrade it to a B plus before the season is over. It's not his fault, the deficiencies of the personnel of this team. It's not Terry Fontenot's fault, the deficiencies of this team and the personnel. Now, I could go back and look at the draft and see some of the players that I might have taken in different spots, but that's hindsight. Anybody that's watched me for more than 2 minutes knows what a big fan I was of Spencer Brown, the big offensive tackle from Northern Iowa that the Buffalo Bills took. He was available. He didn't go till about the 100th pick at the end of the third round. The Falcons could have gotten that guy, and I would have liked that pick for sure. So that was I'm happy with the grade. I wouldn't quibble with a C right now, almost as an incomplete, but do it for the right reasons. It wasn't for expectations. This was not a playoff team. Watch what they do, not what they say. What they do told me it was a rebuild, including holding out every single one of your veterans on a team that was 4-12 during the preseason. This is a rebuild. What's my prediction for the Falcons? Asks Ashton. That's tough. It could go either way this year. It could be 7-10, somewhere in that neighborhood, depending on this week against the Jets. 5-12 might be iffy. If they lose to the Jets, 5-12 might be the high water mark for this team. Coming out of that 1-4 against one of the worst teams in the NFL. And then with the Jaguars will come up, try and get a split from a couple of the NFC South type of teams that I think it's going to be a little tough. So Nick asked, is it too early to start looking towards the draft? No, not really. I don't think so. I think now you start asking the question, do you look at a quarterback for next year? I wanted a quarterback for this next year. I knew it was a rebuild. But they felt they had enough left in Matt Ryan for the next several years that not to go for a quarterback this year. I'm okay with that. My question has always been, what was offered to Terry Fontenot for that number 4 spot? Because my first instinct was always trade down, trade down, trade down, trade down, and trade down. You need as many players as you possibly can. And the only way you're going to get players on the Atlanta Falcons right now is through the draft, because free agency is not an option because Thomas Dimitroff put you in too big a hole. So let me going through a couple of these. There are a couple more questions I wanted to hit on real quick. We've got several more people coming into the chat, so appreciate you coming in late and watching afterwards. Like I said, hit that like button. Hit any questions too. If you hit questions after the fact, I'll come in and answer them for sure. And it says Falcons should let Davis go and get Gilmore. That'd make it close. Says y'all know low. Says that they should let Davis go and get Gilmore. They'd have to get creative to do that, to get Gilmore. One, they need Davis. They need another running back. They need a true running back. I don't think you want to go into it with just Wayne Gallman and Cordell Patterson. Cordell Patterson's not a 20-carry-a-guy type of game. He's more of a player. He's more of an X factor. Two, that's about half of what you're going to need to get Gilmore for just this season. Three, Gilmore's probably not going to come to the Atlanta Falcons because the Falcons are looking at a top 10 draft pick next year. He's going to want to go win. He's 31. He's 32 years old. If you're looking at the NFC South, Carolina Panthers make a little more sense. He's from Rock Hill, South Carolina. They're 3-1, and they got a boatload of money. I don't know the cap situation with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and what they have available. That makes sense too. Former Patriot, going to play with Tom Brady, defending Super Bowl champions. They will make another playoff run. I think they've got a chance as well. Couple more here real quick. What was your favorite era for the Falcons? And was it the Falcons, Jay asking, the Falcons 2011, 2016? Yeah, that was kind of a golden era for the Atlanta Falcons. You got to remember, I mentioned Rankin Smith earlier in this in this video pod. The Falcons set a record for professional teams in any sport for going the longest without back-to-back winning seasons. It was like 45 years. Can you imagine rooting for a team for 45, 50 years, knowing if you just had a winning season, you weren't going to have one the next year? Can you imagine that? It's unfathomable. So even though the Falcons were knocking on the door and getting pushback for, whether it was the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship game, that was a golden era of Falcons football, and the expectations went up. The expectations absolutely went up, and after 3 losing seasons, people are losing their minds in Atlanta because expectations have been raised higher. This is a much more viable franchise than it was before Arthur Blank came around, and they expect better. World-class facility, salary cap with an owner willing to suspend and hit those numbers and give signing bonuses and do all those things. So again, the resources and the investment with the Atlanta Falcons hasn't been the problem. It's the allocation of those resources and the investment that was a problem, and I lay that at the feet of Thomas Dimitroff. Dave comes in and says, Scott, could this be Dion's last season in Atlanta? I'm tired of this small front seven. So he's referencing Dion Jones, linebacker, about 215 pounds, tackling machine out of LSU, and someone that I think has outplayed his draft spot. So good value in Dion Jones. At least it was until they gave him a new contract. His cap number is pretty big. And I feel you here, Dave. Especially in a 3-4, we need your backers to be a little bit bigger. They're going to be at the first point of attack. Could it be his last season? It could. They just restructured his contract, so we'll have to see exactly what that would mean to a dead cap number next year. But at 215 pounds at linebacker, he's smaller than a lot of safeties. I don't think that his size has ever been an issue, though. His speed has made up for it. And in an era where you need his coverage out of your linebackers as much as you do the thumper at run stopping, I really like Dion Jones, especially, and he's back fully healthy. He's playing well. Are you getting good value for him based on his contract number? Probably not. And I think that becomes more of an issue than does Dion Jones have a spot in this defense? Because I think he does for sure. And Jay also says, I liked your head coach from 2012. That was Mike Smith. Mike Smith was also a defensive guy, and it didn't take him long. I believe he ended up the winningest coach in NFL Falcons history. It didn't take long. 3-4 winning seasons. If you're able to get 40 wins, you could end up being the winningest coach in Atlanta Falcons history. A defensive coach with a general manager that wouldn't get you any defensive players. Dan Quinn was the same way. Now, Dan Quinn may not have known how to manage a clock, but I don't put all of the Falcons' deficiencies at the feet of Dan Quinn for the same reason I didn't think Mike Smith should have been fired. Thomas Dimitroff should have gone if you're going to get rid of Mike Smith. You held on to the wrong guy. I'm not saying Mike Smith was the right guy, but Thomas Dimitroff definitely wasn't the right guy. Real quick, and Jacob, and I remember that bowling ball of a man named Michael Turner. And that's what's kind of difficult sometimes as an old school Falcons fan. If you watch the Falcons in the 80s, they were bad. They were really bad. But you know what they could do? They could run the frickin' ball. They were tough. They had Gerald Riggs and William Andrews for the better part of that decade, 1,300-yard rushers every season, and they were tough. Then 90s comes in Ironhead Craig Hayward, another guy like that. And then Fat Jamal Anderson, rushed for 1,800 yards in 1998. Then Michael Turner, those guys. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of you, a big fan of the big, powerful running back as well. Mike Davis can be a little bit of that guy. Was kind of hoping Todd Gurley would be that guy. Steven, who came in Steven, what was Steven's name 3 years ago that was kind of washed up too? I'm forgetting him as well. So couple more questions, a couple more comments, and we're going to get out of here. Dave, he comes up. I grew up a 4-3 guy, so I'm not enamored with the 3-4. I'm a little bit that way as well. Nick Saban converted me a little bit on that. And it just depends on which guys you have in the 3-4. Grady Jarrett is not a 3-4 end, and he's not a 3-4 nose guard. So you are taking your best defensive player and you're running a system that doesn't suit his needs. That bothers, that's tough. Now, if you've got a mountain of a man at the nose guard position and you've got a couple of very mobile defensive tackles that you can put on that end position, Cameron Hayward type, Richard Seymour types, Georgia boy that went out and played a long time in the NFL, multiple, probably going to be in the Hall of Fame if he's not already. Steven Jackson. That's who I was thinking, guys. Thank you. He was kind of washed up too by the time he got here. And going back to Dave, if you've got the right guys, the problem is it's hard to find those guys. Those, big mobile players like that can play a 3-4 end while holding up. It's not all that easy, but to a certain extent, what you need out of a 3-4 defense is size. You need size and strength. And there was a comment earlier, and I think it was from Dave saying about the light front seven. You can't run a 3-4 with 290-pound defensive linemen. Not three of them. So with Mike Pennell coming up, I don't care if he is just a fire hydrant, as long as he makes the interior line immobile and just holds his ground and lets Foye and Dion Jones be fast linebackers, and he's doing his job. But you're running a 305-pound nose guard in there, and they just don't have the size and the personnel to do this. So I get it. I get it for sure. And again, it was one of the reasons why I've harped on this a zillion times. This was not a win-now team. It was not a win-now defense. They didn't have the personnel for it. 4-3-3-4, 3-3-5. I don't care. They don't have the personnel to do it. They didn't have the cap space to do it, and rookies aren't going to come in and change that. This is a rebuild. I like what I'm seeing so far from Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot, but they've got to have the tools, the resources to allocate towards this rebuild. And so far, they haven't had it. So look at team spirit. Is this team still fighting? Yeah. Do I see things that just the obvious? Do you ever watch and think that coaches do things that aren't obvious just because they want to show how smart they are? No, I don't see that. I would have liked to have seen Cordell Patterson get the ball in the fourth quarter. That seemed obvious to me, but that happens. That's a one-off. So I like what I'm seeing out of this regime. And I think with the ownership of Arthur Blank and the right people in charge, the Falcons will be a playoff team sooner rather than later, but it ain't going to be this year. So I'll let y'all get out of here. I appreciate you being with me. And if you're watching after the fact on Facebook, on YouTube, please leave a comment. Hit that like, subscribe, and share button. Leave a comment. I'm absolutely OCD about responding to those things. So we'll certainly be in for next time you'll see Nick and I will be on Broncos for breakfast tomorrow. If you're watching Eastern time, we'll be on at 9:30 Eastern, 7:30 Mountain, 6:30 a.m. where he is. And then we'll get ready for the weekend. And on Friday, we'll do a little bit of a preview of the New York Jets in London at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Tottenham Hotspurs are named Spursy because they are prone to blowing big leads. Ironic that that's where the Falcons are going next. So thank you for being here. And we'll see you next time.